Well, hello everybody and welcome to your language teaching and learning channel. As you can see, we're in the other studio now because we're going to take a little break from the shop talk and continue talking about the Beatles discography. Now, if you recall, the last album that we checked was the Beatles Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which was one of the first, if not the first, concept albums, leading the way for other great groups to do similar work. For example, in the early 70s you had Tommy by The Who, a rock opera, and before that you had Pink Floyd, for example, with The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, The Wall, okay, and other groups. And what I like about these type of albums is that the first song is actually a continuation usually of the last song, and there's usually no space between the songs, so it's kind of like you never know where to stop or where to start, and you can continue listening to them forever. Now remember, around this time was the rumor that Paul McCartney had died and another person had taken over, a lookalike, causing big controversy at the time if you watch videos from then, and even up until now there's controversy about that. The next album was the Beatles' White, an excellent double album. Now this album came with a poster, and in the poster you had random pictures of the Beatles on the one side, and on the other side you had the lyrics to the songs, right? Also it included portraits, color portraits, 8 by 10 of the Beatles, okay? Great contributions, of course, from George Harrison and Ringo Starr here. Excellent songs back in the USSR, Obladi Oblada, Birthday, Helter Skelter, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, okay? Now at the time there was a little trend, and they started working with color vinyl, and that's the reason why the albums are white, okay? They are in white vinyl. The quality is exactly the same. They were not easy to come by, and very few people have that, right? If any. Then we continue with the movies, and the next movie they made was Yellow Submarine. Now this album obviously contains all the songs, including the instrumental songs from the movie. Of course, you also have Yellow Submarine and All You Need Is Love. Interesting song, and I remember I used that to teach a philosophy class once because of the lyrics. The next album and movie that we have is Magical Mystery Tour. Now this album came with a magazine with pictures and anecdotes from the movie, making the movie, and here this album was no exception about the rumor that Paul McCartney had died. Here he's dressed up as a walrus, and according to fans, there are some countries in which the walrus means death. So for many fans that was another indication that Paul McCartney had died. Also in part of the movie, I think it's in the end, they walk down a long staircase wearing white tuxedos and a flower on the lapel. Now in the case of John, George and Ringo, they have a red flower, whereas Paul McCartney has a black flower. So for that was yet another indication for the fans that Paul McCartney had died. Furthermore, in many of the songs in that album and in other albums, fans mention, okay, if you listen to the song and in this part, in the background you hear the message, Paul is dead. Or in this other song, if you play the record backwards, you can hear Paul is dead. So, very interesting, okay? The next album we have is Hey Jude. Excellent songs here too, The Ballad of John and Yoko, Lady Madonna, Paperback Writer, and Hey Jude. Hey Jude was written by Paul McCartney. Originally it was written for Julian Lennon, John's son, whom they affectionately called Jules. So the name of the song was originally Hey Jules, but later they changed it to Hey Jude. In this album we also have Revolution. Now there were 3 revolutions, okay? In the White Album you had Revolution number 9. I would recommend you listen to that song because remember I told you they started experimenting with music and sounds and things, and Revolution number 9 is an interesting concept, especially for that time. Then you have also in the White Album Revolution, which is a ballad the unplugged version, as we would call it now, acoustic. And apparently people say that at the time there was always conflict between Paul McCartney and John Lennon, that Paul wanted to have more ballads and pop songs, whereas John Lennon was more rebellious and wanted to do more radical rock and stuff. So in this album you have Revolution rock version, okay, with John's strong voice there, you know, we all want to change ahead, and excellent electric guitar with distortion. If you check the video, you can see George Harrison playing a beautiful red cherry Gibson Les Paul. And then we get to this album. Now, if you remember in the first video, I mentioned that my cousin Tonio has showed me an album of four guys crossing the street, and that was this album. To me at the time, obviously, I didn't understand it. It was actually his younger brother, Pablo, who made me listen to the song And I Love Her, right? Which sparked my interest in the Beatles, and of course I ended up buying all of their albums. And by the way, thank you very much for everything, cousin Pablo, and rest in peace. And back here, we continue with the rumor that Paul McCartney is dead, because here in the picture, he is the only one who is walking barefooted. So for the fans, that was yet another indication that Paul McCartney had died. And then we get to their last album, okay, Let It Be. Now, I was lucky because if you remember, I came across this album, which is even before they were called the Beatles. I found this album by accident, and includes My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. This one, Let It Be, I also got lucky because it came with pictures, okay? And this album is very famous because it's the last album they made. They also made a movie, and you've probably seen it, okay? They had stopped doing concerts a few years back, and we will talk about that in the next video. But here they actually went to the rooftop to sing a couple of songs, causing incredible commotion in London there, and everybody crowding around the streets, the traffic turned into a mess, people climbing into all the buildings, the terraces to see what's going on. I think they even got arrested that time, okay? So that was their last album. However, the record companies continued making, you know, releasing their albums. And they released a red album, which was their greatest hits from 1962 to 1966, and the blue album, greatest hits from 1967 to 1970. These were both double albums, okay, and you have on the one side a picture of the Beatles when they first started out, and then of course once they were already famous, in the same building, right, the picture, so you can see the difference there. Now those albums were also released in color vinyl, but I bought the regular black vinyl. Okay, then we get to this album here. Now this was a promotional album, okay? You could not buy it. There was a contest in a very popular radio station in Canada, and it was a trivia contest, and I think the question was about the first Beatles drummer or something, and I answered correctly. So I got a whole bunch of things, including a t-shirt from A Hard Day's Night and the album. This album contains their hits from their movies, okay? Then we get to this one here, okay? This is the Beatles' love songs, okay? Another double album, okay, with all their ballads and romantic songs here. And it was a gold edition, so for that reason, obviously, I got it in gold vinyl, okay? Wouldn't have it any other way, right? Okay, and then we get to the last one here, and we've already seen this one. This one is the Beatles rarities, because it includes pictures that were not released or songs that are a little different to the ones that they actually made the albums, right? And here you have a song called You Know My Name, Look Up the Number by Ringo Starr. Now that song was not released in any of the albums. It was released as a single, and oops, I'm sorry, wrong group. Actually, I did that on purpose, and the name of that song makes reference to the secret of learning a language. Anyway, the single was You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, and on the other side, Let It Be. Okay, and that was the They had other albums that came out. I didn't buy them all, obviously, because I had their music already. I remember there was an album called The Beatles Rock and Roll Music. It was a silver album with their pictures in it. And again, I had all their albums anyway, so that's why I didn't buy them. And I actually made my own cassettes at the time of what I thought were the best songs, and later on CDs. I'd like to show you one more album here. Now, this one's called All This and World War II. My brother Moose gave me this album, and it's not the Beatles, okay? It's actually a whole bunch of groups. Oops, look, you can still get the t-shirt. A whole bunch of groups from that time singing songs from the Beatles, right? You have, for example, the Four Seasons, the Bee Gees, Rod Stewart, Tina Turner. And the reason I bring it up is because in the Sgt. Pepper's, there's a song called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And in that album, Elton John sings his version of that song. And to be honest, I like his version a little better than the Beatles. Anyway, I hope I have sparked enough interest for you to listen to the Beatles and try to decide your favorite song or your favorite album. If you're anything like me, it'll be very difficult to decide. Thank you very much, and I leave you with And I Love Her.